So I watched Kamen Rider OOOs, one of the, I guess you can call it the Neo Heisei Kamen Riders. And I gotta say, after giving a chance, I really liked it. Before watching OOOs, I had this pre-assumption that, Kamen Rider especially after, around the time Neo Heisei, especially after like Den-O, Kamen Rider Den-O, it's just become very childish with like excessive jokes, humor, and it just doesn't make the character feel real because it's just been very exaggerated. It's like they just came out of an anime or a cartoon. Now, I understand this is for kids, but it feels more targeted towards kids. That even understand Kuuga and Akito used to be targeted for kids, but it still had a broad audience, not only just like kids, like for like 10 and 10 and up or something like that. Neo Heisei Kamen Riders just feels like it's specifically targeted for kids, and you can see that by just like the excessive marketing or the aggressive marketing of the toys and gadgets that the Kamen Riders use to transform. And they just make a kid at home just go, oh, I want a gadget like that. But I just feel that, it's not very suitable for like someone like age like me. And I gotta say, Kamen Rider OOOs kind of changed that for me. Although it's not as dark as Kamen Rider Kuuga, Faiz, Akito, Ryuki, it still had a very good story. A very good plot. Even though you still see kind of those elements of just like humor or just like inconsistent tones, I would say. But not as much. I would say as much here in Kamen Rider OOOs, but at the end, after watching the entire show, it just really resonated with me for some reason. The whole topic of Kamen Rider OOOs was about greed, right? Human greed. And the greed, or the monsters, the big villains, are trying to utilize that humans' greed to be able to make coins, right? Not coins, but to be able to make medals in order to potentially complete themselves. In the show, the villains are incomplete and are seeking for medals. This really made me wonder why humans are, greedy, or why humans are just like this, having this greedy nature. It's just about materialism in general, because we see a lot of the times these people that are victims of greed, literally greed, just are very attached to materialistic things, from eating like excessive amount of food to just diamonds and stuff, and also status. And I feel like at the very end, what the lesson is to not to be attached to those things. And it kind of ties it together near the end, because we find out that not only do they want to complete themselves in a villain form or whatnot, it's also about feeling human, which is the takeaway. It was just about feeling human and being able to feel what humans feel, which these greed, or these monsters or villains, are very envious and just jealous that humans could feel these things. Because at the end of the day, greed is just a bunch of coins, like walking medals that are just jumbled together, right? And it just made me like look back at all the characters, at all the victims that were influenced or manifested their greed villains, and that, wow, this is human nature. Human nature is just full of greed and desire. They see everything as just very transactional. When they satisfy something, when something is satisfied, or when they get something that they want more. Which I find this very interesting. Not even just talking about Kamen Rider, I'm just talking about life in general, just outside of the Kamen Rider. Things, you may get one thing, now you want something else, which you kind of see that pattern in Kamen Rider OOOs. It's about being like satisfied, getting what you want, but it still doesn't satisfy them. There's still this void that they're still trying to fill, even though they already got to point A, point B. They keep going, and then they just don't stop. In which the greed just tries to take advantage of that. And because they know that's human weakness, they just have this void, just don't stop doing it. Once they are able to get fulfilled for something. They want the feeling where that dopamine in their mind just goes away. And then they want like a better high or a better dopamine to try to increase that feeling of reward, which, I understand. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being ambitious, but it's just things like that just makes me reconsider human nature, which I think that's the biggest lesson, or my biggest takeaway from Kamen Rider OOOs. It's by examining human nature. We can also kind of draw comparisons to Kuuga, even though it's not as dark and gritty as Kuuga. But I feel like it's also, there's something sentimental about it, about just being human, right? Human nature. Like, for example, the protagonist in Kuuga, Goda Yusuke, tries to have a positive mindset and try to save everyone, his own life at risk for other people. Even though he's going through a transition within his body of becoming like this dark Kuuga and losing his own humanity at the very end, but he didn't. He was almost there. He was nearly there. There were times that he almost lost his humanity because of the evil that he had to deal with from those villains, from those monsters. But at the end, it just never happened because he still really clinged on to his own humanity. And Kamen Rider OOOs, they kind of just did like a 180 by telling a story which people had a problem holding on to materialism and losing their humanity at the end. Even though like the victims are just in some sort of hallucination or possession of this greed aura or power, are just it's a very like exaggerated version of being attached to something. But if you think about it in real life, it's not that far off from a philosophical standpoint. And what really struck a chord with me is Ankh. Ankh. They have a very, even in the beginning or probably throughout most of the show, Eiji and Ankh has a very like a rusty relationship, like a very up and down kind of relationship. Sometimes they enjoy each other's company, while probably Eiji enjoys Ankh's company more. Ankh is very nonchalant about it, or just very annoyed about it at times. And yeah, we just realized that Ankh, at the end, he's trying to gather all these medals, possesses policeman's body to be able to potentially feel what humans feel, to be able to become human, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, like I said, it's like a whole 180 from Kuuga. Kuuga was more about holding on to humanity and fighting the villains that have no humanity at all. The villains in OOOs, it's about trying to become human in the most messed up way, in a most unethical way of doing that. Because they're just a bunch of coins and they're just very envy about feeling warmth, feeling kindness, because they can't really feel anything because the world is just very dull to them and they want something more than that.